Greetings, viewers. Eric the Car Guy here. And I hope I started that at the right time because I didn't hear the ding. Anyway, welcome to the live show where I answer your automotive questions, sometimes butcher your names. And in this particular show, we are throwing in an AMA segment. So if you want to ask me other stuff, I will do what I can to answer those, as much as I can. All right, here's the layout, the rules, the what have you. I take the questions from the Google Plus live event. So if you haven't posted a question there yet and the show is still going on live, feel free to head over there and post a question. I will do my best to get to it during the show. I don't really want to say runs for 30 minutes because I often run over and I get a little random towards the end and I try to answer the most recently posted questions. So there's still a chance. However, if you're watching this on YouTube, I cannot see those questions being posted, and therefore I will not be answering them from the YouTube comments posted to the video. Apologies for that. However, I have a solution. EricTheCarGuy.com is always available to you. It has an FAQ page that answers actually a whole lot of the questions that I get asked. In fact, I wrote those articles just for those people that ask those questions. Now that we're done laying the groundwork for all this, why don't we move this window over here and get started answering your questions? Because, yeah, like that's what we're here for, right? Oh, yeah, I did mention I sometimes butcher people's names. Apologies for that in advance. It's a dyslexia thing. I'm not real sure. Davin Yap. Hey, Eric, love the show. I parked my car overnight out in the yard, and the next morning when I took her for a drive, I noticed my rear drum brakes are making a scratching sound with a noticeable stronger braking force. This fades away after a few brake cycle. This sounds like rust buildup in the rear drum brakes. I would like to ask, is there a way to prevent this from happening because my dad's Nissan Sentra doesn't have this problem? Maybe it's so subtle I can hardly notice it. You are absolutely correct. It is rust buildup. The term that I use for it is called flash rust. Happens on brake rotors also. Happens in humid areas. People out in the desert have no idea what you're talking about when you're referring to things like this, but anybody that lives any place that's kind of humid does. My experience is the cheaper the drums or rotors, the more prone they are to this. And there's really nothing you can do other than, go out for a drive. Try to avoid parking on the grass, standing water, near standing water. But really, there's not much you can do about it. But you're correct in the fact that yeah, it's probably rust buildup on those drums. And if free brake applications, it goes away. Let it sit for long enough, however, and it could rust up enough to cause a brake pulsation. I have seen that. Anything you can do? No, unfortunately, no. All right. Michael Bloom, have you ever watched the British show Wheeler Dealers? Yes, I have. In fact, Ed China is one of my personal heroes. It's the one where Mike Brewer, the car salesman, buys rundown classic cars, then gives them to Ed China, who goes step by step on how to fix them up again. Then Mike tries to sell the car for a profit. Your show and that one are my two favorite shows on TV. Hey, thanks, because of how you show how to fix problems with automobiles. And yes, I have Roku, so I watch your channel on my TV. Awesome. I asked that because of how you said you may be changing the direction of Eric the Car Guy. I've learned so much from both you and Ed, and my skill set has increased dramatically over the past several years. There are 1,000,001 build-a-car shows on the internet and TV, but very few fix-a-car shows. Prime example of your excellence as a teacher is the B Series Honda timing belt replacement video that I bought. My 2C, if you decide to pivot to car builds, just remember who brung you to the dance. At least do a general repair video every so often. Either way, keep up the world-class work and what you're doing. You really do help people. Michael, thank you very much for that comment. And to answer to it, as far as changing the direction of Eric the Car Guy, it's a little difficult to say, or a little difficult to describe to you exactly what I mean when I say that. As far as, yeah, you're correct. There are a lot of build-a-car shows on television. Why? Because people like watching them. And more of those than fix-a-car shows, because not as many people like watching those. That's the cold, hard truth. That being said, I don't want to do it like the other people do it, and I haven't. In fact, I've shot several videos already. In fact, I'm probably, I'd say at least maybe even 40 videos in, and I'm not kidding when I say that, to the Fairmont build. My aim has always been education, and I think something like doing vehicle modifications is a good vehicle for that, because there's a lot of interest in the subject matter, and therefore the attention is there. For instance, I shot videos on rebuilding a differential for my Fairmont project. And in those videos, I took the opportunity to talk about a differential, how it works, how to set up those gears, but also the different parts of the gear. I shot a separate video on just the gears themselves and how they operate and the different parts of them. There's different parts to a gear. So the educational component will still be there. Just as far as me, the fix it of the week, honestly, I'm getting kind of bored with that. And there are a lot of people doing that now. And I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't appeal to me nearly as much as the challenges I face when I build something, or at least that I've encountered with the Fairmont project. Yes, it's just as challenging, but like I said, there are a lot of opportunities that I have found and will continue to find and continue to use to try to continue the educational component of my channel. It's not going to be a selfish, Eric's building his car or whatever. It's okay, let's talk about why we want to make these changes to this component, because you can't modify something unless you understand how it works. So my focus, my mandate going forward with that is to teach how the system works, look for areas of improvement, or look for areas where that system can be manipulated in order to serve our needs. Maybe that puts a finer point on it, but I'm very honored that you brought up me and Wheeler Dealers, because as I said, Ed China is somebody I've admired for quite a long time, and I think his work is fantastic. And in fact, I've tried to meet him and Mike at SEMA for the past couple of years, and for whatever reason, the stars don't align for that. But one day, I will have a picture of me standing next to Ed China and Mike Brewer. That would be awesome. Anywho, moving on. Robert Eich, not real sure. Good morning, Eric. We have a 1994 Mazda B4000 4x4 5-speed manual transmission, 4-liter V6 engine, 146,000 miles. Problem: coolant system won't flush clear, comes out brown even after multiple consecutive flushes. Details: we've had the truck for 3 years, bought it used, and the cooling system was in bad shape when we got it. We have replaced the radiator, water pump, all hoses, heater core, which was clogged solid. The thermostat housing, we also know there's a head gasket leak. White smoke steam from the tailpipe, lots of coolant lost with a visible leak and engine misfire sound while running. We plan on using a head gasket sealer, K&W nanotechnology, to fix the leak, but want to flush the system before using. So far, the system has been flushed 5 times using radiator super flush fluid, running for 4 to 6 hours before flushing again. Each time we get buckets of brown water coming out. It doesn't appear to be improving or cleaning up. The goal is to get the cooling system clean enough to use the head gasket sealer. Question: is the coolant turning brown from years of gunk in the block, or is it coming from the head gasket leak, contaminating the flush oil exhaust? And what point is it okay to try to use the head gasket sealer? Is some brown water in the block okay? Is there a specific brand head gasket sealer that you recommend for this type of situation? Many thanks for all you do. Okay, Robert, I'm going to lead off by saying I don't agree with this approach. I don't think block sealer is the way to fix a head gasket, especially one that's as bad and as chronic as this one has been. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success with it. And considering you already have contamination in the cooling system, I think you're really just kind of going to make the situation worse rather than better. I think what you should do is address the head gasket issue. As far as the corrosion inside the block is cast iron, I believe, and there's rust or scale on the inside of it. And it's likely that will be there for a good long time until the thing goes to a hot tank at a machine shop. Now, is that something you necessarily need to do? I can't say for sure based on your description. It sounds like I don't know. It's really difficult to say. It's debris. The color of the water, okay, fine. But it's debris that you're really on the lookout for. And the fact that you have a head gasket leak, a known head gasket leak, means that combustion gases can get inside the coolant, making it more acidic, which makes it more corrosive. So therefore, that's not helping the problem. I do not recommend you use some kind of block sealer to try to fix this problem. I recommend that you fix the problem, which is you say head gasket. And that, I will be honest, is probably the most likely cause. However, with as many problems as you've had with that cooling system, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that you might have a cracked cylinder head or even a problem with the block itself. And you will not know any of these things until you take it apart. So with that in mind, I suggest it's time to remove cylinder heads and get a look at what you have and what you're dealing with and take things from there. So yeah, I don't really agree with using some kind of stop leak to try to fix a known chronic problem like that. I don't think that's going to end well. In fact, you may end up clogging the cooling system worse. So I would give up your attempts to do the flushing, and I would address the problem head on, which would mean either taking it somewhere to have the head gasket done or tackling it yourself, one of the two. Either way, I wish you luck. Let's see. It looks like Anthony V is answering some questions. Other than Eric, love the show. You should do more tool reviews. I have some Astro stuff that seem to be working awesome. I get their ball joint press and Astro Mini Impact. Astro stuff is really good. I've been using the heck out of my light and everything since I got it, and some other tools that I've gotten from them. I've got a really nice set of torque sticks and impact sockets that protect wheels from them, which I think are awesome. It's like opening up a little jewelry case. It's really pretty. However, I am looking to phase out tool reviews from my program. The views really aren't there, and people honestly seem to get annoyed by it. Instead, I'm going to take the approach of looking for videos about solutions, perhaps using certain tools. So instead of them being tool reviews, I intend to use the tools similar to what I did with the Eastwood brake flare tool. And I had the bad brake line on my Acura. Similar to things like that. And also, can you machine a flywheel with a brake lathe? Things like that over tool reviews. Like, this is tool. It's blue. It's really comfortable in my hand. There's plenty of people out there doing that now, and I feel I've spread myself too thin as it is. So I'd rather stick to the program and offer mechanical solutions to people. Lone Maurice Muntayu, I hope I said that correctly, and you've been on the show before, if I'm not mistaken. Back again with questions about my Ford Mondeo 2.0 TDCi. I have just been to MOT, that's vehicle inspection over in the UK. Vehicle roadworthiness check. I have to change brake lines for the rear wheels. I decided that since I will open the brake system, I would just go ahead and change the brake lines for copper lines. The old lines are made of steel. While I'm at it, I will also rebuild the calipers. Now, my question is, where should I pay extra attention? I know that on my car, can only bleed the ABS system using the original Ford diagnostic tools. As far as I know, all the cars' valves for the ABS are normally closed, and there's just a pass-through valve, which is normally open for when the ABS is not active. I don't plan on opening the ABS unit. Is there a risk that air will get into the ABS system? I will post my progress on the forum. By the way, I cleaned the turbo and catalytic converter with oven cleaner and got the car back. Got back all the ponies. The car got back all the ponies. The turbo looks healthy again, and the spooling sound is back. Yay. So the oven cleaner did work out. I believe that was last show or possibly the show before that you had asked me that question, if you could use oven cleaner to clean those parts. Apparently you were successful with that. I mean, I went through the same logic that you probably did. I said, it's metal. It's got greasy gunk on it. Oven cleaner is designed to clean greasy gunk off of metal. Once again, if you try this, please be careful. I have a scar on my arm. I said it in the last show. From oven cleaner getting on my skin. Now, I had those thick rubber gloves and everything, but this was above the rubber gloves, and I didn't feel a thing. I mean, it literally ate through my flesh, didn't feel a thing. Extremely careful. Also wear your safety glasses because, you don't want to lose an eye. Anyhow, let's get back to your question about the ABS. First of all, I mean, the expensive copper lines, is it really worth it? I mean, if you want to do it, fine, go ahead and do it. But I mean, a lot of people in Europe seem to have that. Every time I do a video about brake lines, people in Europe are all like, use copper lines. And well, yeah, that certainly is an option. But I've still got a stock of steel line that's laying around that I'm still working through. And I don't mind it. I mean, I've gotten, I think, pretty adept at bending it. As far as rebuilding your calipers, that's something I don't recommend, if I'm honest. Most of the time, calipers that need to be rebuilt have rust on the inside of the cylinder bores, and you have to somehow machine that away in order to get them to seal properly again. In fact, I said this in my video about rebuilding calipers, that it's not something I recommend you do for that very reason. If the inside of the caliper bore is pitted, rusted, it's just going to tear up a new seal, and it's not going to seal well. So it's kind of a waste of time. I realize the rebuild kits are cheap, and if your time is also cheap, then fine, have some fun with it. But as far as that goes, nah. Bleeding the ABS system, I'm not familiar with that vehicle. It's not here in the States, to my knowledge. That being said, I really can't say whether you need a diagnostic tool to do it or not. I've many times I get away without it. It's just it's really difficult to say. However, I will give you this little piece of advice that actually a fan told me whenever I'm opening up the brake system to do service is once you crack a bleeder open, take something and wedge the brake pedal all the way to the floor. That will prevent fluid from continuously leaking out as you work. It's a brilliant strategy, and I've used it, and it's worked great. So viewer suggested, awesome. I mean, several viewers suggested doing that very thing, and it's worked out for me. So as you do your work, you can prevent fluid loss and therefore also air getting into the system by going through and doing that method. And that way, the only air that will be in the system should be in the components that you removed. Good luck. Alexander Angulo. Hey, Eric, 2008 Nissan Sentra 2.0 S, 134,000 miles. I found that in colder weather, it takes a few seconds longer to start up than normal. As an example, instead of cranking for 2 seconds, she might crank for 4 to 5 seconds. This only happens when it's been sitting overnight. No check engine light and otherwise runs completely fine. Just wondering if there's anything to worry about, like a bad battery starter fuel pump. Also, an AMA question. In your last ETCG1 episode, you said you might be moving towards doing more videos related to vehicle modification. Any thoughts about the Fixing It Forward series? Will you still do more videos like that in the future as well? Thanks for all your awesome videos and take care. First, let's address the question that you have about your vehicle. As far as long crank times, uh, one of my primary suspects for this is the check valve inside the fuel pump, especially if this is something that happens after it sits overnight. Inside the fuel pump, there is a check valve that's supposed to maintain a given amount of pressure for, well, let's say at least 30 minutes. When they get old, they tend to leak down. But in other words, when you turn the vehicle off and the fuel pump goes off, all the fluid doesn't drain out of that entire system and go back into the tank. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to make it so that when you go to start your car, you've got fuel pressure that's more quickly available. Now, over time, this check valve may wear out, may get gunk in it, may just stick open for whatever reason, and this pressure will bleed off, and therefore it takes longer for the system to prime before you can actually start the vehicle. I've covered this in a fuel injector, well, in the, checking fuel pressure video. And that's a good way to verify this, is that you can check the fuel pressure, find out if the fuel pressure bleeds off after, say, 30 minutes. If it is bleeding off after 30 minutes, then it's likely you have a problem with that check valve. Now, is this something debilitating causing the pump to fail? No. Actually, you can function with this just fine. In fact, here's an even easier check without even hooking up a fuel pressure gauge. The next time you go to start your vehicle after it's been sitting for a long period of time, turn the key to the on position where all the idiot lights and everything are on the dash, but do not crank the engine. Turn the key back to the off position and turn it back to that same on position, each time in between counting from like 3 to 5 seconds. This will prime the system. If you start the car and it starts right up then you can reasonably assume that your problem is with that check valve in the fuel pump. It's a pretty easy check. And with that being said, that could be your solution to the problem. Otherwise, you're replacing the fuel pump, because that's really the only way to do it. If you're thinking you're going to go inside, replace your check valve, it's a seal unit, it's not going to happen, and kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. So if it's bad enough, replace the fuel pump. But if not, hey, keep trying that method. Now, about the Fixing It Forward series. Fixing It Forward is not dead. In fact, I've just put it on hold while I finish the Fairmont project. I actually have been working behind the scenes on turning Fixing It Forward into something completely different, beyond my channel, growing it beyond the borders of Eric the Car Guy, so to speak. And I've made a lot of progress with that. In fact, just a few weeks ago when I was down in Atlanta, I met with some great people. I actually just wrote the newsletter today, and that will be coming out on the 31st. So that's next Tuesday, and has more information on that. But Fixing It Forward, as far as my channel is concerned, I'm not real sure where it's going to go forward with that. However, Fixing It Forward as the initiative of helping people that can't afford auto repair, that is moving forward, but it's moving forward in another direction besides just my channel. So we'll see how that pans out. I'm going to give it some time. Once again, I'm going to revisit it after I finish the Fairmont. Right now, I'm trying to get the Fairmont done before the meetup, which, if you're counting, is in about 6 weeks. I have no engine, no front suspension. The wiring harness I still need to redo. There's still a ton of stuff to do and not a whole lot of time to do it. So therefore, that's all I can think about right now. After that's all over, well, we'll come back and see what Fixing It Forward has in store. But I'm not walking away from Fixing It Forward. That is something that I feel very passionately about. Um, Chris Rocha. Hi, Chris. How you doing? I know Chris. Chris and I go back. He's been to every meetup, I think, since the beginning. In regards to your ETCG1 video, where you would you reconsider your next project to be your Vigor? If so, what would you do, or what would you do next? A lot of people are really concerned about this, and rightfully so. Actually, one of the reasons why I mentioned doing project cars for future videos was because my dad's 51 Chevy, which you may have seen in other ETCG1 videos, is something I have a very real interest in. In fact, when Dad visited in April, I asked him about this because he's recently retired as of this year, and that was going to be his project for retirement. However, he doesn't have the same tools and equipment that I do. He's got a great garage, you've seen it, and all that kind of thing. But I might be able to help in that regard. So if I were to do a next project after the Fairmont, what's in my mind, I would love to build that car with my dad on the show. Just throwing that out there. So for those of you that actually watch this video, you got a little piece of information that not a lot of people know about. David L. Hey, Eric, I have a 2001 Civic LX, 172,000 miles. My windshield wipers shudder across the windshield intermittently. You can see the ends of the blades shake back and forth. It does it no matter how much water is on the windshield, and no matter how clean the windshield is, and no matter what the speed is. It did it with my old wiper blades and my new ones too. Once in a while, the driver's side blade will contact the windshield trim. Bad motor gear, bad linkage. I also have a slight pull to the left, just had the steering rack, sway bar links, and strut top mounts replaced. Any ideas? It was aligned afterwards. Love the videos. Keep up the great work. Okay, one question at a time. As for your windshield wipers, Honda uses a ball and socket type of windshield wiper linkage inside the cowl where the windshield wiper motor attaches to the windshield wiper blades, or windshield wiper arms, I should say. And those plastic cups or sockets tend to wear out, sometimes break, and sometimes fall off completely. When you talk about wiper blades that are hitting the side of the windshield pillar, almost always that's what the problem is. So the motor works and everything works, but you probably got a problem with that linkage. Now, thankfully, those parts aren't that expensive. They can be kind of difficult to get to. You got to get that little plastic piece up that's underneath the windshield wipers, and that can be kind of a pain. But if you go in there, well, actually, a real easy check. Turning windshield wipers on and have your hand, be ready with the key. And as soon as the windshield wipers reach their apex or close to it, turn the key off. Then take the wipers themselves and see if you can move them back and forth. There should be little to no movement at all. If you're able to move it a significant amount, you definitely have a problem with one of those plastic sockets on one of those pieces of linkage. I think they're like 12 or 13 bucks to replace them. You just pop them off and pop them back on. So yeah, I think that's what you're dealing with there. As far as it pulling to the left, always the first thing to check is tire pressures, and second is the tires themselves. If you have like different tires from side to side, like different brands or different wear, that can cause a pull. Also, if they didn't quite get the alignment right, but there's really nothing to adjust on that alignment other than toe. It could be the strut tops, something like that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't use OE parts on Honda suspensions, they're never right. And I hate to say that because Honda suspension parts are super expensive, but they never ride as good as they do on the Honda suspension. Put anything else in, and you usually end up with problems, kind of like what you got here. So hopefully you get that sorted. But first, check the tires and the tire pressures. That's like the #1 cause of those issues. Gabriel V. Fixed the vibration on my 2000 E46 328i manual. It turned out to be that it was caused by a rear trailing arm bushing. Anyway, there's been something that's been bothering me for quite a while. I am stuck in traffic for a prolonged time, like 1 to 2 hours, and I need to move forward from a dead stop. It feels like the clutch is slipping. The car is all jerking around, and I have to give it an insane amount of gas to get it moving. Otherwise, the engine stalls. I tried the clutch slip test and that you showed when you were diagnosing a bad clutch on the Ford Fiesta, and the engine stalls and everything like it should. So I really have no idea. Could you please be a good goobo? I don't know what that is. P.S. Last time I was under the car, I noticed 2 of the bolts that hold the transmission housing to the engine are missing. I don't think those bolts missing is the problem there, but you say this happens when it gets hot and you're sitting in traffic for a prolonged period of time. My question is the engine getting hot? And there may be something that's not clutch related that's going on here. Like after reading through your question a second time, I'm wondering if you have an engine performance issue and it's not a clutch issue, because you say you've tried that test that I showed in that video, which is usually a pretty good indicator if you've got a clutch problem. Maybe it's not the clutch. Maybe you've got something going on with the engine and it's starting to overheat, or there's some other issue going on there. If you have any check engine lights, I think you would have mentioned it. If you did, definitely look into those. But outside of that, look into like, I don't know, temperature related stuff, your coolant level, all that kind of thing. Keep an eye on your temperature gauge. Is your temperature gauge getting to a point of being unsafe or possibly having a problem? Heat and certain components don't necessarily work out too well, so that's definitely something to be considered. But I don't know if your issue is something to do with the transmission. It almost sounds like something that's engine performance related. Kyle Stevens has a 2000 Oldsmobile Alero with 72,000 miles, a 2.4-liter twin cam motor. While at highway speeds, my tachometer fluctuates between 2100 and 2400 RPM, as if the transmission is shifting into a higher gear, and never does it at regular city speeds. Car has a new fuel filter, fuel pressure regulator, and tune-up. Trans fluid is red. It does throw a service engine light soon for a downstream oxygen sensor, but I've never heard of an oxygen sensor doing this. Thanks for all you do. Can't wait to meet you at the meetup. Hey, cool, Kyle. I look forward to that also. Okay, people, if you're going to give me questions and you've got an oxygen sensor code, don't say you've got an oxygen sensor code. Tell me what the code is, because there are about 20 different codes for oxygen sensors that can mean a ton of different things. Doesn't mean you necessarily have a bad oxygen sensor. It could mean that there's an issue with the engine that the oxygen sensor is detecting. In other words, if you have an oxygen sensor that's detecting a lean condition, it might be causing the problem that you're having there. It sounds to me like the torque converter is going in and out of lockup. And that could be because it's getting bad information from an O2 sensor. It's really difficult to say. Anytime you have a known problem, such as a code for an O2 sensor, specific code, mind you, doesn't mean the O2 sensor is bad. It could mean that there's an engine performance problem that the O2 sensor is picking up. I cannot stress this enough. I would attack that problem first and then see if your shifting problem goes away, because it could be that the computer is getting bad information and causing that torque converter to go in and out of lockup, or it could be a problem with the torque converter itself, or it could be a problem with the hydraulic circuits that cause the torque converter clutch to activate, or it could be a problem with the electronics. A lot of things could be going on. That code is going to be your first clue. So that specific code, follow the trail of that specific code and see if that can lead you to a possible solution. And look forward to meeting you at the meetup. Steve Z is working on a 1988 Ford Escort GL with 1.9-liter engine and 3-speed auto trans. The car runs and drives fine, but when the transmission shifts from first to second gear, it shifts hard and jerks into gear. It also seems like it's delayed in going from first to second. Shifting from second to third is smooth and normal. Is there any adjustment in the transmission that would make first to second shifts smoother? Any mechanic and can additives I can add to the transmission? The car only has 50,000 miles, so I'm hoping it's not a major mechanical problem with the transmission. Thanks. Okay. First to second gear, there really is no adjustment. First is going to be just a one-way clutch, and second gear is going to be the engagement of most likely a band in it's definitely a band in a 1988. It could be the band is worn out. It could be the band needs adjusting, but I don't want you to touch it, because adjusting automatic transmission bands is something that should be done by a professional. It needs to be done exactly correct. If it is not done exactly correct, you just bought yourself a transmission. So what I would recommend is that you take it to a transmission shop and have them evaluate it. Now, hopefully there's somebody there old enough to understand what they're looking at with a 1988 and not just plugging in a scan tool and saying, oh, you got a bad transmission. You can't even plug a scan tool into an 88 anyway. That being said, somebody that's done it long enough to know about band adjustments. But you say your 2-3 shift is fine, so I'm struggling with this one, and you don't have a lot of miles on it, but the car is much older, so it could be a lot of things, and it's really difficult for me to sit here and say exactly what it is. As far as that adjustment, maybe is all I can say. As far as mechanic in a can, I'm not a fan. Not a fan of mechanic in a can. Puts me out of a job. No, not necessarily. I haven't seen a whole lot of success with it, and sometimes mechanic in a can cause other problems, and it doesn't sound like this vehicle was abused in its lifetime. It seems like it's probably led a pretty cushy life with only 50,000 miles since 1988. Therefore, I would treat it with kid gloves. I'd try to try to dive in and find out what was going on with it. If you brought it to me, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be, driving it, trying to evaluate it. It probably has limited electronic shifting. So I would say that it's some sort of mechanical issue, or it could be a sticking valve inside of the valve body. That's another possibility. So there's more than one thing that could be going on here, and somebody that's an expert in transmissions probably be a worthy investment for you. Brian Fiddler, 99 Mitsubishi Eclipse that he picked up for $1,000 4 months ago. I had some idle issues that I have fixed, as well as some smaller issues, such as a malfunctioning door handle and replacement of the hatch struts. I haven't put a lot of money into it, maybe $150, including oil and coolant changes. I'm not using it for long trips, just basically back and forth to work. I've been noticing a clunky noise near the front passenger tire, mostly at low speeds, while accelerating or braking. I've noticed that the front bolt supporting the passenger side upper control arm to the strut tower has rusted out. It's basically just floating there. I'm guessing I found the source of the sound, which is nice, but I want to know what issues this will cause and if the car is horribly unsafe to drive. I don't feel any loss of control in the steering, but not sure what the function that upper control arm performs. Thanks for your help. Brian, I'm glad you posted this question today, because as far as that upper control arm, its job is to basically keep that wheel on the car. Well, at least that part of the suspension system. If it lets go, you no longer have control of the vehicle. So as far as something you should fix, definitely fix it. And it's good on you for finding the source of the noise. But yeah, the upper control arm is a critical component within the suspension. If it breaks or has a problem, you have a problem, certainly, especially if you're going at speed. So I would address it sooner rather than later. Also, it can affect tire wear. It affects the alignment. I know you say it doesn't affect handling, but it does affect you. I don't think it's going to be, I honestly don't know how expensive it's going to be, but if it is expensive, consider a salvage yard part, and perhaps you'll find one that's in better shape than the one you have, and you'll be able to save some money along the way. That's something that, you could possibly do if you're trying to do this whole thing on the cheap. Definitely address it though. Also, after you're done addressing it, you really should get an alignment, because otherwise it could be chewing through your tires. Just saying. But hey, hopefully that information helps you. Christian Selfo or Kelfo, not sure. Hey, Eric, love your show, and thank you for making such detailed and helpful repair videos. They've helped me a bunch. Thank you for that. I have an 86 Trans Am with a fuel-injected 355 with a mild cam. Sometimes when I drive the car hard, or if I drive it for a long time, the fuel pump starts to whine really badly. It is very loud and concerning, and can be heard from several cars away. Even if you're standing next to the car, there's a strong smell of gas that's not normally present. It seems like this only happens when there's less than a quarter tank of gas, which makes me think that maybe the pump is overheating. It is an Airtex electric pump, which was installed by the previous owner less than a year ago. I've noticed that when this is happening, the engine diesels when I shut it off. It has happened a couple of times when the fuel pump was not making noise, but almost always happens when it is making noise. Thanks in advance. Oh, yes. All right. You know what? You're super smart for figuring out that the pump is overheating, because that's exactly what's happening. One of the things that causes fuel pumps to fail is running your tank low on gas. Not a lot of people realize this. So after your tank gets below like a quarter tank, that fuel pump is not submerged in the fuel. That fuel is actually what cools that pump. So you're spot on with your assessment that it might be overheating. As much as I hate to say this, because I've been to Airtex and I've met the people there, I even did a video about it. They don't have the best reputation when it comes to their pumps. However, that does not account for the gas smell. That says to me installation problem. I don't know if you remember, if you watched the Fixing It Forward series that I did with the Ford, what was it, Contour. The gasket for the top of the fuel tank where you insert the fuel pump in there was not in there properly, and the thing had a horrible gas smell inside the car. So it needed to be sealed back up. So there might be an issue there and if there's an issue with that O-ring or whatever seal there is on top of the gas tank, there could be other issues also. So if you're smelling gas, that's no bueno. And if you're going to go that far, because you have to drop the tank to get there, at least it was done a year ago, and hopefully it'll be easier. And do it when the tank is empty. Just saying, don't do it with a full tank. That sucks. You might consider a different pump. And as much as I hate to say it, it's probably working fine. But if you're looking to get rid of that noise, probably the only way you'll get rid of it is to swap the pump out. But even GM pumps make some noise. So I just want to put that out there. I don't want to throw air techs under the bus, but like I said, they got a reputation, and it's not necessarily a good one. But it sounds to me like you need to check the installation of that pump, if nothing else. Ross W. Hey, Eric, I've decided to sell my '06 Tiburon and buy another Tiburon with a manual transmission. Hey, well done. Yeah, so many people come to me and say, I've got an automatic and I want to switch it over to a manual, and have no idea the kind of monumental effort that actually is. You're much better off just buying another car with a manual transmission. Thing is, I bought it for $4K and put tons of work into it. Basically, a complete suspension overhaul, and I'm currently doing some bodywork rust repair to it and hopefully up the value. Would it be reasonable to sell it for the same price that I bought it for a year ago with 104,000 miles, then 126,000 miles now, considering it's in much better condition than it was before? Thanks a bunch. Love your videos. Easy answer, no. A vehicle is worth what somebody will pay for it. A used vehicle isn't worth much. And I've said this before, especially in the modified vehicles video, the more work you put into it, the more personally you make it, the less value it has. The closer it is to stock, the better. To assume that you're going to get the same amount of money because you perceive that it has more value, the work you put in, it has more value to you, but the person coming to you is going to want to get it for the best price possible. So they will pick it apart, and they'll look at your body work, and they'll look at the paint work, and they'll see that it's not professional, and you're going to pay for it. So lower your expectations is probably the best advice that I can give you. And I'm not saying that your work isn't good. What I'm saying is a car is worth what somebody will pay for it. And if they're not willing to pay for that work that you did, well, that's their loss. However, it's your gain based on, the work that you did. And good on you for seeking out a vehicle with a manual transmission instead of trying to swap that one over. In fact, it was mentioned earlier, will the next project be my Acura, and swapping manual to automatic and all that kind of thing. And I'm seriously toying with that idea just to put myself through the torture so that you can see, even on an older vehicle like that, it is, it's not as easy as it's easier said than done, I think, is probably the most accurate phrase to describe that kind of thing. Okay. Umer Sohail has a 2005 Accord long crank time in the morning. Could it need a tune-up? Is it true that highway driving causes less wear on your engine than city driving? Could you explain why this happens? Thanks. Okay, that's several questions. Long crank time in the morning. Refer back to the earlier question about possible issues with the fuel pump and do that key trick and see if that helps you. Tune-up, never going to hurt to do a tune-up. And with Hondas, actually 2005, probably the only thing you'd be able to put in there is plugs. And I think those are 100,000 mile plugs. And make sure you use the NGK or Nippon Denso plugs that it calls for. Highway driving causes less wear because the engine's at operating temperature and it's not doing stop and go stuff. There's less time for condensation to build up. It's just less wear and tear. Accelerating and decelerating, that's the kind of thing that wears an engine. When it's driving on the highway, it's pretty cush. It's just functioning at a given RPM, and it's not really working too hard. In fact, it's designed not to work hard so that you get better fuel economy. The harder the engine's working while you're driving down the highway, the more gas you're eating, or fuel, I should say. As far as, yeah, that's probably the best explanation I can give you for now. Okay, now we're getting to that point where we're about to get all random on it. So this will be the last one I answer in order. I usually start with the first people that posted questions and then go from there. All right, Clinton Erickson. Hey, Eric, I have a question about my mom's 99 Saturn SL2 1.9 liter dual overhead cam, automatic transmission, ABS with 151,000 miles on it. I just recently had to replace the rear brake line and ran from the master cylinder to the rear flex hose, which meant I had to do some arts and crafts and bend and flare a new line. I actually kind of like that work, but, good job. When I was done making the new line, I gravity bled the new line before I tightened it up to the rear flex hose. My question is, since the vehicle is equipped with ABS, do I need a scan tool to bleed it fully? It has a decent pedal, but the pedal still travels halfway before it starts to push back and have pressure. And if you pump it, then the pedal feels really good. Should I find a scan tool to properly bleed the system, or just do a normal bleeding procedure and hope for the best? Any help would be awesome. It does sound like you might have some air in that system. A 99, I don't know if that would require the scan tool or not. I worked on Asian cars. Asian cars, at least the ones I worked on, never had this whole scan tool to bleed thing, unless you mess with the ABS system. So if you were into the ABS system itself, then you got air in it, then you had to deal with it, and then we had a special tool to deal with that. However, you know, like the domestics and their bleeding with using scan tools is not something I'm as familiar with. That being said, I would try for the standard bleed, but you know, after you do that, because you say you pump the pedal, it gets better. That almost always means you still got some air in the system somewhere, and it only takes a little bit. Air is compressible, liquids are not. So this tiniest bit of air you're going to get as far as that pedal feedback. Um, Try bleeding the brakes, and then I'll post a link in the description to the video I did about basically taking it into a parking lot and slamming on the brakes a few times. A lot of times that works. It's worked wonders for me. You know, a lot of people just don't believe it, and they're like, "Why does that work, Eric?" Well, my theory is that it does what I call resetting the master cylinder. Master cylinder has two cup seals on the inside of it, and there's two bores that go out the side that lead to those brake lines that go to the different parts of the braking system. When you hit the brakes hard, those cup seals open up, and they open up in a different place than they would if there was a slow transition. So instead of them always going down further into the bore, you hit the brakes hard and they may stop up here instead of down here. So that's the only explanation I can possibly offer. I call it resetting the master cylinder, but you know, that's my term, and how scientific that is, well, take it with a grain of salt, but I've done it a lot. It's worked for me. Random time, gonna go and oh, Mike Moto just saying hi. Hi, Mike. Daniel Cages. Hey, Eric. I think I broke my Acura CSX. Now sometimes there's a noise when going in reverse or backing up in neutral while the wheels are like rocks stuck between rotors and dust plate. I'm having a tough time trying to figure out exactly what this question is. Could be the rust buildup, could be an actual rock stuck in the brake system. Sometimes that happens. See if you can narrow down the offending wheel by jacking up the wheels one at a time and spinning them. For the front ones, put it in neutral, or actually a CSX might be all-wheel drive. So that could be something that's going on there. I just. Oh. Eric, dude, you should have a weekly TV show. This is James Richmond Jr. Weekly TV show on some network channel. Hey, I have a baby Jeep, which means I got a 2.4 cylinder instead of the 4-liter 6-cylinder. Any ideas on how to get more power? Put a turbo on it. Cram more air in there, see what happens. Or sometimes, you know, you can, I don't know about putting a chip in there if that's going to really do you much help. But yeah, forced induction or nitrous. You know, that might be even easier, although dangerous. Actually, both things are dangerous. Power comes at a price. You could, with either one of those suggestions, you could probably scatter it, or you could just buy something with a 6-cylinder in it. But I drove 4 cylinders for a while, and well, I have driven 4 cylinders for a while, and I'm not exactly a light guy, so I've dealt with underpowered vehicles. Oh, let's see. Okay, Frank there I go, sucking at saying people's names again. Give a shout out to Vegas. We are watching your live show. Hello, Vegas. Those are easy. Oh, I like this one. Eric, are you going to start working out and drinking kale shakes? Not only is it healthy, but it's trendy on YouTube and will expose your videos to a wider audience. Thanks, Steven. I actually go to the gym 5 days a week, and I don't really work that hard. As far as kale shakes, no. In fact, the reason why I still have a gut is because, you know, it's my diet. I know it's my diet because I like chocolate, and you know. All right, let's answer somebody's car question here. All right, Stuart Lee, 2000 Chevy Silverado, runs rough, idles low, poorly misses with no EGR, have plugged. It runs fine with it unplugged. EGR valve is clean and pedal moves freely. Put different one on. I know it's good and it runs the same. Runs fine as long as it's unplugged. Oh, weird. Okay, so if I'm reading correctly, you've got a 2000 Silverado with the EGR plugged in, runs fine with it unplugged. Okay, so you unplug the EGR and you don't have a problem. I'd say that check for codes. There could be a short in that system that's causing the EGR to open up. In fact, if you want to verify that, just plug in, let's see, did you say you have a new one? Yeah, you put a different one on. So if you got 2 of these, unplug the one that's on the car, plug it into one that's off the car and look at that pintle. If you plug it in, you turn the key on, and it automatically opens up. There's something telling it to open up, and that's where your problem is. So I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. Jonathan Penny, Herrick, I'm getting an old 1995 Ford Escort wagon. What are some things I can do to perk it up and make it feel like a newer car? You can't. I've had my fair share. Well, I've worked on my fair share of Escorts back in the day, and they're kind of prone to head gasket failures. And I mean, good little cars when they're running right, no doubt. But as far as making them more powerful, you'll probably break it, if I'm honest. But once again, if you're looking for more power, there's nitrous and forced induction, supercharger, turbocharger, that type of thing. It just depends on what you mean by more power. There needs to be a plan. So more power means more air and fuel into the cylinders, which compromises gas mileage, which, might compromise the transmission, might break other parts. Like more power in your engine, especially in an older car that wasn't made to have more power, means that you'll probably be breaking other things. And that can be fun. But like with my Fairmont project, one of the reasons I'm trying to do it the way I'm doing it is because I had a plan. I put it together, and I had an idea of what I wanted on the other side of it. And that's extremely important. I mean, you can't just look at it as I want more power. Well, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. But me, I take a holistic approach. I mean, it's the entire vehicle that I'm looking to make it perform better. And there's a cascading effect. I mean, if you can't put more power to the pavement, then having more power, perfect example. There are videos out there, and of course I've seen them, of a guy that has a Fairmont with an LS and a giant turbo in it. So of course I've watched these Fairmont videos, and people have mentioned them to me as well. Really cool. Okay, I get it. But if you ever watch him drive it or try to drive it, he can't keep it on the road because it just spins the tires and goes sideways whenever you give it any real power. I don't want that. That to me just feels dangerous and unnecessary. It doesn't seem to accomplish the goal I want, which is for the vehicle to perform better, which means upgrading the suspension and the tires and everything else to go with it. Not to say that, what he made is bad or anything like that, but to me, it doesn't seem fun because, like I said, there's no way to control it. And it just, it's cool, but how long can it be cool for? Something like, how long can that be sustained? I'm going to answer one more question here. Alec 40, 2013 Passat 6-speed automatic with 40,000 miles on it. I'm looking to increase the horsepower and torque as the rest of the world would like to ask you what you think are the best first steps in doing so. I'm really looking to increase torque at lower RPM, exhaust tune, tires, brakes already on my list. Not sure where to go with the engine. I was also wondering what driving characteristics you would change if I increase my tire size from 16 to 17. Thanks for your help. Stay dirty. Wow, it's the same question. Okay. And it's the same answer once again. And horsepower and torque, it starts with the engine and the camshaft. Then with something that new, you have to see if you can reprogram the computer to handle the increased fuel and airflow. Then once again, it's about exhaust, it's about tires. As far as going for the larger tires or larger wheels, you just get smaller tires. So in other words, the lower profile tires and have pretty much the same size outer diameter. And there are ways to figure that out. Probably formulas that you can dig up on the internet somewhere. I did it with my Integra years ago. It started out with 14-inch wheels. I ended up putting 16-inch wheels on it, but I had much lower profile tires. So the overall size was the same, didn't affect the speedometer, worked out great. In fact, that was a really good upgrade for that car. That car loved those 16-inch Motegis that I put on it. Loved them. And that car would just flat out fly. As far as your car, you know what? I'm going to refer you to my good friend, Charles Sandville, aka Humble Mechanic, who happens to be a VW tech at a dealership. And he knows more. He's forgotten more about VWs than I know. And he would be the person to ask about that. And okay, well, here's an AMA question. I'll do last question. Mark Sweeney, AMA. Hey, Eric, what's one automotive technology you wish never became obsolete? Carb to fuel injection. And what are some changes that you are glad have taken place? And what are some changes you wish to see take place? And finally, do you ever get bored and just watch your videos for fun? Thanks, Mark S. Okay, automotive technology I wish never became obsolete. Crank windows. How about that? How many broken window regulators have you had to replace, like on newer vehicles? Because it seems like every new vehicle has has power windows, at least here in the States. I'm sure in Europe they still have crank windows, but it's something on newer cars that just doesn't seem to exist anymore. It seems to be one of those convenience items. And if it breaks, then your window doesn't go up and down. But like, just mechanical stuff. I like mechanical stuff. I mean, electronics are cool. I'm not saying they're not cool, but sometimes, the driving experience gets taken away and lost in those babysitters that are constantly looking after everything you're doing and make sure you're doing it right. What are some changes you wish to see take place? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what changes that I would have, because all right, somebody recently asked me what car I would buy if I had any amount of money and I could just go out and buy a car, what would I buy? And I said, I'm making it now. It's Oliver. And the reason is because it's something I made. And that's what excites me about it is I turn a key or push a button or whatever, however it works out. I had a hand in every part of the operation of that vehicle, and that appeals to me in a big way. As far as, do I ever get bored and just watch my videos? No. I mean, I spend enough time watching them when I edit them. I don't think people realize the hours and hours that those of us that do this put into editing video. It's extremely time consuming. I spend all day Saturdays and then some days during the week doing edits, just depending upon how much I have to do. But yeah, editing takes forever. And honestly, as far as watching other YouTube videos, I used to have the time for that. I just don't anymore. I mean, things have gotten pretty busy, and that's just the way it is. But don't feel bad for me, because I feel like I have one of the coolest jobs in the world, and I'm not going to stop doing this anytime soon. Anyway, with that, we have gone for almost an hour, and I've done my best to answer your automotive questions. And there's been some other questions that have been thrown in that I answered as well. And I hope that was somehow entertaining to those of you that weren't getting your questions answered. But anyway, I will put links in the description to the videos and additional information that I mentioned during this program. If you have additional questions, I would ask that you hit that description and get those answers there. Also, EricTheCarGuy.com. That's another place to get answers to your automotive questions if I didn't get to them today. I'm going to do this again in 2 weeks. And since 2 weeks is beyond the realm of this month, I can't exactly say what date it's going to be, but I will, as usual, post about it the day of the event. I want to thank you for watching. I want to once again apologize if I butchered your name. And oh yeah, if you wish to connect with me socially, there's Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and also Instagram. And I close each of my videos, including these live events. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.